Sean Hannity Show. More behind-the-scenes information on breaking news and more bold, inspired solutions for America.
Last but certainly not least, to the youth of this city, I will seek justice on your behalf. This is a moment. This is your moment. Let's ensure that we have peaceful and productive rallies that will develop structural and systemic changes for generations to come. You're at the forefront of this cause, and as young people, our time is now. To the people of Baltimore and the demonstrators across America, I heard your call for no justice, no peace. Your peace is sincerely needed as I work to deliver justice on behalf of this young man. To those that are angry, hurt, or have their own experiences of injustice at the hands of police officers, I urge you to channel the energy peacefully as we prosecute this case. I have heard your calls for no justice, no peace. However, your peace is sincerely needed as I work to deliver justice on behalf of Freddie Gray.
Every day, gangbangers and all. Not one time have I been mistreated. Right. Situations happen. It's how you handle this matter. I feel this family's heart. I'm telling y'all, no justice. This is why they say no justice, no peace. You can't have peace when you put my son in a grave. Come on, y'all. If it was your child, come on, be honest with yourself. This is not right. This brother has a right to hurt. He has a right to have pain.
That could have been my son. No. That could have been. I got an 8-year-old son that lives in these communities. What happens to him? Come on.
Hey, it's Barry.
All right, that was the state attorney, Mosby, earlier on, and the family. And our top story continues. This morning, a judge acquitted Baltimore police officer Edward Nero of all charges in connection with the April 2015 arrest of Freddie Gray, whose death from a broken neck sustained while in police custody sparked large protests and widespread rioting in the city. And describing what happened, and I'm drawing on various news organizations, including the Wall Street Journal, the prosecutors charged Officer Nero and 5 of his fellow officers with crimes after Mr. Gray died of a spinal cord injury sustained in police custody. Prosecutors charged Nero with second-degree assault for touching Gray during what they allege was an illegal arrest and with reckless endangerment for failing to seatbelt him in a police van. He was also charged with 2 counts of misconduct in office. If convicted, he would have faced a maximum prison sentence for second-degree assault of 10 years and up to 5 years for reckless endangerment. But Circuit Judge Barry Williams found him not guilty of all charges in this case. Nero opted for a bench trial rather than a trial by jury. In this particular case, he pleaded not guilty, as did the other 5 officers. Now, we find ourselves again in a situation where, go back, the Cambridge police acted stupidly. What'd the president do? That's what the president said. Well, the Cambridge police did not act stupidly. Our constitutional attorney president rushed to judgment. If Trayvon, he could look like my son. If I had a son. Well, in that particular case, an eyewitness placed Trayvon Martin on top of George Zimmerman with audio of George Zimmerman screaming at the top of his lung as the eyewitness described a scene of ground and pound of George Zimmerman's head into the ground and injuries consistent with the eyewitness's story. The president was wrong again. Then we have the case of Darren Wilson, the officer in Ferguson, Missouri. In that particular case, you got a video of 2 guys robbing a store, multiple eyewitnesses, even though the president rushed to judgment. And in that case, not guilty, no indictment. Why? Based mostly on the testimony of black eyewitnesses in Ferguson, Missouri. Now, in this particular case, the expectation was raised again for a certain verdict. And I know some people are disappointed, but some people weren't given the facts. A lot of people rushed to judgment. A lot of people pleaded. A lot of people made the case in public that these officers were guilty. And officers, just like everybody else in this country, have the presumption of innocence until they are found guilty based on the evidence. What's your reaction to this, Brian Claypool?
Well, Sean, this verdict today sets us back 50 years in race relations. This prosecution of Nero was equally important as the driver of the paddy wagon because he was the first guy to come in contact with Freddie Gray.
Well, you say in race. Wait, hang on a second. How many of the officers were minority in this case?
The officers, I believe, were Nero's white.
Excuse me, I understand. I understand that, but many of the officers are involved. You said to set race relations back all these years. But can I finish?
Let me finish. Let me finish my thought. Here's why. Because you have white police officers walking into a neighborhood, looking at a man, undisputed, that Freddie Gray did nothing wrong. He was minding his business. He wasn't committing a crime. And this knife that Amy mentioned,
that is simply not true.
Visible. The knife wasn't visible. Let me finish. The knife wasn't visible to anybody.
It was visible.
They looked at somebody. He ran.
That's just simply not true.
Last time I checked in the criminal code, running is not a crime. Let's talk about the.
Can I just stop for a second, Brian? So you think it's normal behavior for somebody that has standing warrants, a known history of drug dealing, as Amy said, and I'll let you guys dispute it, that a knife that is visible to the police officers, they're out on patrol. You think it's normal at 8:30 in the morning for somebody to see an officer and just take off and run if they're up to no good? If they're not up to no good, do you think that's normal? I'm asking. Do you think that's normal?
Abnormal behavior is not criminal conduct. Second of all, there's no evidence that either of these
Brian, you're wrong. You're wrong, Brian. It's the totality of the circumstances, and it was a high-crime area, okay? That's reasonable suspicion to chase this guy.
It's not,
absolutely.
It's not reasonable suspicion to chase. These officers, Amy, these officers had no idea. Nero had no idea that there were pending warrants outstanding on this guy.
Well, wait a minute.
That's not true. Absolutely, that's not true. He was recognized. They understood.
All right, let me go back to one point. Horace, let me get back to this point. Brian is claiming this is setting race relations back 50 years. Half the cops here were minority. The other half were white. So yeah. I'm trying to understand, how does this set race relations back 50 years?
The only thing I see is that we're giving bad advice to people that will ultimately get more people injured. Instead of justifying criminality and unlawful resistance, we should be encouraging people to comply with the law. Now, black Americans operate as law enforcement, white Americans operate in law enforcement. The color line here should be blue, not black and white. This division is exacerbating what Director Comey called the Ferguson effect. We're going to see more of these kinds of problems, not less.
Horace, you're a black man. Let me ask you a question. Do you think it was fair of Nero to throw Freddie Gray, stick his knee in his back? Do you think that is a reasonable apprehension of a suspect?
That's why I'm saying there was assault at some point. I mean, there were 5 officers. You're telling me they couldn't safely subdue this guy? You have video of him. They had a conversation.
No. You guys
the situation.
Taser the guy.
They did it. That's what George Zimmer.
You guys are setting up a standard. You're setting up a standard that is going to make it more likely that officers will resort to firearms instead of a closer encounter with individuals. This is not some unusual situation. This is actually what happens on a regular basis. People see the law enforcement. They either are engaging in a crime or they have outstanding warrants, and some of them choose to run. And the officers have to track them down. Now, if you have your way, they either won't do it, the Ferguson effect, or they're going to involve deadly force sooner. Neither of those are good outcomes for people.
You're apprehended by a cop, and you say, hey, wait a minute, I need my inhaler. I can't breathe. And that cop doesn't help you, and you die, what do you think your family's going to say? You're going to tolerate that? You think that doesn't set us back in a humane society we live in? To answer that question,
I'm curious about the 20 separate criminal encounters this individual had and how he preyed on the community. How many black people were harmed because he was willing to deal drugs at the local elementary and junior high school? How many people were harmed because as associated as part of his drug activity, there could have been drive-bys? It is remarkable to me that we let black poor people suffer in these communities rather than stand behind the people in blue.
Amy, thank you for being with us. Horace, thank you. Brian, thank you all for being with us. We'll continue more of our top story.